Mortal Kombat 1995 stands as one of the most successful blockbuster adaptations ever put on screen, and the public remains largely unaware of how close it came to an unmitigated disaster. The production faced broken bones on set, a $1 million robot that kept falling apart, and one of the biggest box office stars alive turning down the lead role to headline a lesser project. These are the actual behind-the-scenes stories that shaped a film an entire generation grew up loving. We will examine 12 facts and moments where this production could have derailed but somehow survived. From a snapped wrist that altered casting forever to a government that tried to censor the final product, every detail of this story is completely factual. Right after appearing in The Mask in 1994, Cameron Diaz landed the role of Sonya Blade. The crew considered her perfect casting for the tough military soldier, and training began immediately before the situation took a sudden turn. During combat prep for the production, Diaz broke her wrist and had to drop out of the project completely. The crew needed a replacement quickly, leading actress Bridget Wilson to fly to the set the very next day to grab the part with only 1 day of notice. Wilson walked onto a chaotic film production, having to learn her choreography on the fly, and executed the role perfectly. A fractured bone altered cinematic history by replacing the woman who had just starred opposite Jim Carrey, and most fans who grew up watching this film remain unaware of that casting shift. Producers built the character of Johnny Cage around Jean-Claude Van Damme from the very beginning of the creative process. The creators based the flashy combatant on the real-life movie star, incorporating his cocky attitude, spinning kicks, and signature sunglasses. When the movie entered production, executives went straight to Van Damme with the offer, but the actor declined the opportunity. Van Damme turned down the role designed specifically for him to headline a rival fighting film instead. That project came out in 1994, and while critics buried it, the film actually became a box office success. Meanwhile, actor Lyndon Ashby stepped onto the Mortal Kombat set and embodied Johnny Cage so perfectly that viewers still quote his lines 30 years later. Ashby secured a lasting legacy, while Van Damme suffered critical rejection, leaving a strange twist of fate sitting in the historical record for anyone to find. Studio executives originally wanted Sean Connery for the role of Raiden, hoping to cast James Bond himself as the Thunder God. Producers pitched the concept to him, but Connery declined the offer because he wanted to avoid taking on a heavily physical combat role. French actor Christopher Lambert took the job instead, bringing a calm and otherworldly quality to Raiden that worked exceptionally well for the story. Lambert created a version of the character that carries its own lasting reputation today, with fans adoring him in that role and revering his performance. Lambert walked into a position that Connery rejected and transformed it into a widely recognized cultural staple. The situation proves how a second casting choice sometimes becomes the only version anyone actually remembers. Goro remains one of the most intimidating villains in the film due to his forearms, enormous size, and unsettling movements. The filmmakers avoided computer generation entirely for the character, opting instead for a physical animatronic puppet that cost $1 million to build. It took between 13 and 16 puppeteers operating at the same time just to force the creature to walk across a room. The off-screen puppeteers operated the upper half remotely using high-tech telemetry, while a stuntman inside the suit handled the walking and the lower arms. This contraption broke down constantly, causing production delays and forcing work to a halt because the machine refused to cooperate. Despite the high price tag, the crew still had to manage the puppet carefully every single day on set. The final result looks outstanding on screen, demonstrating the unique physical presence that practical filmmaking achieves when digital effects cannot replicate the same weight. Shou played Liu Kang and performed almost all of his own stunts throughout the production. During the fight against Reptile, Shou crashed into a pillar hard enough to fracture his ribs on the set. Most actors would have stopped filming immediately, called the medic, reported the injury, and waited for medical clearance before continuing. Shou decided to hide the injury from the director, pushing through the pain to finish the entire sequence by quietly telling his co-star to avoid hitting his right side. By the time filming wrapped, the physical damage was already done, yet Shou never hesitated to complete his work. That level of dedication shows clearly on screen, making the brutal showdown between Liu Kang and Reptile feel raw and relentlessly fast. The fight sequence looks highly convincing, specifically because the man performing the choreography was fighting through an actual medical injury. That Reptile fight sequence was never supposed to exist, as the writers excluded it from the original script completely. When the film finished production and went through test screenings, audiences provided clear feedback that the project lacked enough combat scenes. The core identity of the property revolves around fighting, and viewers demanded more action, which meant the filmmakers had to organize additional shoots. Crew members built a set inside an airplane hangar, reassembled the cast, and filmed a brand new brawl after the main movie had already wrapped. This physically demanding scene required a return to production and ultimately put the lead actor in severe pain when he fractured his rib during filming. The audiences stated that the movie needed another fight, the production team delivered it, and Shou paid a physical price to make it happen. Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa plays Shang Tsung, and his audition story involves a highly unusual approach. He walked into the casting room wearing a full costume, acting in character, before anyone in the room even spoke. Tagawa then climbed onto a chair, towered over the casting directors sitting below him, and delivered his lines downward at them, exactly the way Shang Tsung would behave. The people in that room had never seen a performance quite like it, but the casting directors were not uncomfortable with the approach. Those executives were deeply impressed by how he commanded the space, recognizing immediately that an excellent performance was happening right in front of them. Tagawa won the role on the spot without any callbacks or second auditions required. His portrayal of Shang Tsung remains one of the strongest villain performances in any combat adaptation ever produced. The phrase regarding the $500 sunglasses stands as one of the most quoted lines in the movie, and Lyndon Ashby invented it completely on the spot. The line was never in the script and was never rehearsed before the camera started rolling. Ashby improvised the dialogue during filming. The crew decided to keep it in the final cut, and viewers responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. It is rare for an improvised line from a film set to end up in the official canon of a franchise, but that is exactly what occurred here. The original game developers saw how much audiences loved that specific moment and inserted the reference into later interactive installments. A throwaway, ad-libbed joke became an official piece of the ongoing story, moving from a spontaneous moment on set to permanent history thanks to a casual acting choice. When the movie needed someone to voice Scorpion's recognizable battle cry, directors wanted the audio to sound exactly like the original rather than an imitation. This requirement meant there was really only one person who could record the audio correctly for the production. Producers brought in Ed Boon, the original creator of the source material, to deliver the famous line for the film. The developer behind the property provided the voice for Scorpion, sitting in a recording booth to shout the phrase that millions of players had been hearing since 1992. His actual voice lives on in the finished movie, allowing the original creator to leave a permanent piece of himself in the cinematic adaptation of his own work. Most people watching the movie have never known the identity of the person they were actually hearing during that scene. Kano was originally designed as a Japanese-American character, establishing his specific background and identity for the story. The production then cast British actor Trevor Goddard, who executed an unscripted decision by playing Kano with a thick Cockney English accent that everyone involved mistook for Australian. Goddard never intended for the confusion, as he was simply using a Cockney accent that happened to sound Australian to American ears. He built a full persona around that vocal choice and delivered an highly entertaining performance that caught the attention of the original creators. The developers watched the movie and appreciated Goddard's work so much that they permanently changed Kano's nationality in future releases. Starting with the 2008 release of Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, Kano officially became an Australian character in the games. An actor's unintended accent choice completely rewrote the source material and became permanent canon across the entire global property. The Mortal Kombat property originally built its identity on brutal violence, blood, and finishing moves so extreme that the United States Congress held hearings in 1993 specifically about the games. These hearings led directly to the creation of an age rating system that still governs the video game industry today, meaning politicians were watching the franchise with heavy scrutiny. When production on the film began, executives issued a mandate that frustrated a large portion of the fan base by forcing a PG-13 rating with almost zero blood. This feature film, based on the most notoriously violent combat franchise of the early 90s, arrived with next to no on-screen gore because political pressure scared executives into pulling back on their own product. The sanitized approach somehow worked anyway, with box office returns hitting $122 million worldwide on an $18 million budget. Corporate restraint failed to kill the enthusiasm for the theatrical release. Steven Spielberg was an avid fan of Mortal Kombat, and his appreciation for the fighting franchise nearly led to him appearing in the movie as a cameo. Producers planned a small and humorous moment for anyone sharp enough to catch the appearance, but the director's busy schedule simply would not allow him to participate. The filmmakers refused to drop the concept entirely, choosing instead to cast a Spielberg look-alike to play the role of Johnny Cage's obnoxious movie director early in the film. They used the look-alike as a visual tribute to a famous supporter who could not physically show up for the shoot. One of Hollywood's most successful directors almost walked into a martial arts adaptation, and when scheduling conflicts prevented it, the producers decided to put a fake version of him in the movie anyway. These unexpected casting choices highlight the strange nature of behind-the-scenes film history. These 12 facts demonstrate how a single movie production defied the odds to become a profitable box office hit and an enduring martial arts adaptation. This production emerged from a chaotic developmental period to help shape the approach to video game adaptations for years to come. Mortal Kombat successfully delivered a final product that resonated with a vast global audience. Viewers often find themselves surprised by the unusual production secrets that shape the final film, as the behind-the-scenes details frequently change how audiences view the classic movie. The conversation surrounding the project continues to thrive as fans discuss the history of the shoot. Supporters continue to enjoy stories about the production process, securing the film's reputation as a flawless victory in the history of cinema.